Hey, everybody, welcome to UGASports Live. My name is Radi Nabulsi. I am your host today. I'm joined by Dayne Young and Hall of Fame Georgia coach Jim Donnan. Jim's at his house. Dayne's at his house with the new baby who's joining the old baby.
It's a 2-year-old and a newborn, whatever that classifies as.
So, two babies, basically. And we're pretty close to the start of, well, we're supposed to be close to the start of UGA football fall camp. Now, here's the thing. We had been telling people when phase one was going to start. We told people when phase two was going to start. We've been kind of ahead of everybody on the updates because we have some good sources inside Buttsmere, and they've been keeping us abreast of what's going on. We reported the other day that, Georgia was supposed to be able to start on August 9th, and then those first games were canceled due to the new schedule coming out. So it changed that, well, the ACC schedule changed, and that changed Georgia's Virginia game. And Georgia and a bunch of other schools said, look, we need a start date. And we reported that, look, instead of being August 9th, Georgia's going to be able to go August 7th with all the other schools. But now the SEC's changed its schedule yet again since the last time we met, and they're not going to play until, September 26th. So when you have your 29 opportunities to practice, do you space them out more? Do you go full hog when you've got this big this spacing here? I mean, with the big gap from when you were supposed to play your first game to the second game. So a lot of things are in the air. The last thing we reported, and if you remember UGAsports.com, and you hopefully saw this in our insider note, is right now we think that the first day of practice should be around August 17th. I think that's a Monday, give or take, a day on either side of that. So hopefully as early as today, hell, maybe during the show or maybe later in the afternoon, we will be able to tell you when Georgia's start date is going to be. So I want to flip this over to Coach Donnan because he's actually been through this. Coach, the thing that I've seen a lot of people say is, well, if practices, the first games move back to September 26th, why not just have more practices, more of these 20-hour weeks, more than the 29 practices that are allowed? Why not just go full bore because you missed spring? Remember, a lot of Georgia fans are really ticked that Georgia didn't get spring and some schools did. I think that's dangerous. I think you have a lot more injuries possibility. But give me your take on how this scheduling thing has worked out.
Yeah, I think throughout the process, everybody's worked together here, the NCAA, SEC, member institutions here, with the first thing coming with the fact that we had the kids were able to come and, work on their own. And then they phased in the second part where coaches could go out with them on conditioning and doing a little bit of walkthroughs and all. They added that, which would certainly enhance things. And now we're getting ready for practice. But, the bottom line is 45 days is just too much of a risk to continue going out there daily. The kids are going to be in a situation where they're going to be hungry starting out. They haven't had the pads on and all that. But I think it's good. There's a reason why we've always had 29 days before the first game. And I think that's why, or 29 practice opportunities. And I think that's the best solution. And the biggest deal for our staff and everybody's staff, all the way down to the trainers, managers, equipment people, everything, is how are the kids going to respond to the students being on campus from a, interaction standpoint, from a safety standpoint. So postpone practice starting until about the time that students get here, because there's no need to start on the 9th or the 7th now, as you mentioned. I don't know how you're coming up with these things because I don't ever hear that stuff. So I'm impressed with you. But the fact is, if we start on the 7th and then the students come and then we have to stop, then you're going to lose a lot. So I think the best thing to do is start right about the time the freshmen, all the people report to campus, and don't put the team in a hotel and everything like you'd have to do if you started on the 7th, and just try to be as normal as you can and establish some kind of normal daily routine of going to class, whether it's virtual or whatever it might be, and doing your strength and conditioning, all that. And then if you do have some positives, work along through that and see how pans out. But anything I say, just like you and Dayne, is conjecture, and football to me is so important. But in the grand scheme of things, it's not that huge a deal when it comes to safety. These kids always try to coach these guys like they were my own family, and that's the way Kirby does too. So there's a lot of safety protocols to be involved with here, and I really get mad about some of these people saying that it's all about money and all that. Sure, there's some money involved, but I think safety's been the preeminent situation throughout this whole process.
Yeah, Dayne, before I ask you a question, I'm going to go on the same rant here. If I hear one more, I'm not going to say those words, one more pundit who keeps trying to point out that, that the schools aren't concerned about the kids. The schools are, the athletes are only here to entertain us and we don't care about their health or their safety or something like that. I'm like, you obviously have not covered high school sports, college sports. You're obviously not in the sports industry. You don't know that these kids are, and I say kids, I mean, half of them, are grown ass men, a few of them even have children of their own, to say that their health is not important. It drives me bonkers. The same with you. Then you were part of the university. You actually worked for UGA. The school definitely has a monetary interest in bringing students back, but there's no way they're going to endanger the health of the students. So if you would address this from the faculty staff side of things, how is the UGA going about bringing the students back, and what would that mean from a football standpoint?
So the first day of classes for students is scheduled for Thursday, August 20th. Now, in terms of what Coach is saying, that's a pretty important date for when students will be back on campus. In terms of how student life will be different, I mean, it's everywhere. It's the Tate Center is going to have fewer people in certain areas. There'll be restrictions on how many people can be in the Miller Learning Center studying rooms. You'll have to get appointments. In certain buildings, you're not going to be able to just pop in and meet with a professor because the office will not be big enough to house that meeting in a socially distanced way. Maybe some professors will say, you can meet me outside at this location, or maybe everything would just be Zoom meetings like we have been doing. There's a lot of things that I think are not going to be ideal, but it's going to be what happens. And the longer that we have to do this, the more it kind of becomes the new normal rather than finding what was the old normal, right? The biggest thing is, bus transit. I think if you've got a class on East Campus and you have 15 minutes to get to North Campus and you can't get on the bus because there were too many people on it, probably put you in a tough situation. I think there's going to be a lot of grace from a lot of people saying you got a lot of circumstances that are difficult to deal with. So we're going to kind of cut you some slack. We'll work with you. I think it's going to take a little slack from everybody just saying we'll work together on this.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think that that's the type of, I feel bad for the folks at the SEC office. I feel bad for the folks in the boards of educations all across the nation. Feel bad for anybody in a corporate office who has to come up with a decision on how things are going to be, because no matter what you do, you're opening yourself up to criticism. We don't have the grace that we need to. We don't have the sympathy. We don't have the empathy for folks that are having to make these tough decisions. All we have is our anger and animosity and knee-jerk reactions to some of this, and it just pisses me off. So I'll get off my soapbox here. I can't be angry. I've got this fried catfish plate in front of me with the Hush Puppies here at Classic City Eats. Let's have some sympathy and empathy for our sponsors and for the people who take care of the UGA football program, as does Classic City Eats. They fed the team yesterday. If, like I said, if it's good enough for Kenny McIntosh and Zamir White and George Pickens, trust me, it's good enough for you. And the coaches constantly come to Classic City Eats and have them use them as catering for the team, which is why we're here. They're big sponsors of our show, and we want to thank them. Plus, the place is immaculate. They actually fog this place every night to be sure that there's it is as clean an environment to come out to eat as possible. So a big shout out to our friends here at Classic City Eats.
How many plates do you think Jordan Davis had?
Because
I feel like he could have 3 and still be losing weight.
He could, yeah. I'm just thinking that I'm trying to think, but the is it Collier Perno, coach, who's the nutritionist over there?
Right.
Yeah, you got to think how much it's fish, but how much fried fish will she let him have? It's like
you got to remember this though. They're not bringing that fish over there like they're bringing that chicken.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
That's what drives Classic City over there. That's what those kids go for, and you can't go anywhere and get any better than what they serve at Classic City. You know, I mean, they just it's and of course the catfish is one of my favorites too. But
you can't get a good catfish.
Again, just the fact that Collier and Kirby and all those people that really have make the decisions keep coming back to Classic City to whatever it might be, recruiting weekends, tailgates for the parents, you know, whatever it might be. There's just a lot of stuff that they rely on, and they're not going to let somebody feed that team or take care of those recruits unless they're number one. And that's why we're glad to be represented on the show here, because I guarantee you these kids look forward to it. I mean, they'd eat it 3 or 4 times a week if they could, but you know, obviously you can't
hear a lot. Yeah,
you can't eat that much fried food anymore. I don't know how anybody ever grew up like we did, Roddy, but it was but anyhow, enough of that. But let's go on.
You mentioned how we get some of the scoop that we do is sometimes we're just hanging out here and there's so many players that come through the door. You know, we might hit them up for a tidbit here or there, but that's neither here nor there. Coach, regardless of when practice actually starts, there's always the question that we get at UGAsports.com, 27 cents a day. When you go, you know, people say, "Hey, what's the buzz? What are we hearing? What's going on in practice?" Now, granted, normally we only get anywhere from 7 to 15 minutes of practice viewing. It's never one-on-ones or 11-on-11. We don't get to see that parts of it, but we do get to actually, see the guys running around. We get to see a lot of individual drills and stuff like that. This year, we may not get to see even that. We don't know what the access for practice is going to be like whenever practice starts. So there might be an even tougher. It might be tougher to find out what the actual buzz is. But that's why I love having you on this show. I know you're not getting over there like you used to, but you still have your ear to the ground. And so I want to know, the last few years you've done this, you've come up with the most improved at each position. Give me some of the buzz you're hearing about at these positions so that we can kind of get an idea of who we should be looking for. You know, there's a lot of questions on this team, and I want to hear what you've been hearing. I'm putting you on the spot. If you want the fried catfish, you have to answer this one.
First of all, I don't have my buzz like I normally do because I didn't get to go over in the summer and watch the summer workouts because there weren't any. And once they started coming back with the coaches, nobody was allowed to go over there. So I always had the benefit of watching spring practice, watching the camps where our kids would be working out on the side, watching the summer conditioning. Just a couple times a week I would go over there. So this is kind of you told me before the show you want me to come up with this. So this is more of a convoluted based on what I saw at the end of last fall going into bowl practice, what I saw going into the off-season conditioning and the lead up to spring practice.
Okay.
This is going to be because anything else would be complete conjecture, and I don't like to give the fans that any more than anybody else because hopefully they listen and watch this for me to give you the right stuff. But I would say an offensive line, I think that Warren Erickson has made the most improvement since he got here, and last year he made a big jump, and I think he's going to be needed there. So I would say, and there's certainly others that have improved too, but I would say Warren Erickson, and I could talk the whole show about each kid, but I'm just going to go real quick. At tight end, I really think Goody is a guy that's got all the stuff, has been injured, but he's athletic, and he's 6'7", 245. So he's got the size. We got 3 guys over 6'6" for sure, and him and Fitzpatrick and
Darnell Washington.
Darnell Washington here that could play on a 3-on-3 tournament on ESPN as far as tall. And then, of course, we got McKitty and these other guys coming up, and we'll see how that goes. But I think Godey's made really good improvement, and he's just got to keep his injury situation. He had a groin deal in the spring, but athletic. And I like Fitzpatrick, too. I think over the last 2 years, he's really developed. All right, let's go on here into running back. I'm a big McIntosh guy. For sure, we got White and Cook, but I think since the first day that he got here to the end of the last time I saw him out there, quantum leap, ability, knowledge of system, everything. This guy is a big time player that I'm glad we got here. At wide receiver, I've talked about Tommy Bush making improvement, but I think the guy overall that's made the most improvement is Karis Jackson. I just think he's got all kind of. Now there's other guys out there now. I mean, I can talk. You ask about one. I just think can help us in all the phases of the kicking game. A good blocker, a really good possession receiver, got speed. Really wants to be a Georgia player. It means a lot to him. I mean, he just got a lot of leadership. I think without question, he showed the leadership when they had that SEC meeting. He was the guy representing Georgia, from what I understand. When they had that Zoom call with everybody. So he's got something on the ball. Maybe he wasn't the guy. I don't know. At quarterback, we could talk about a lot of different guys, but the guy with the skill set that's made a big jump since he got here when Fields left is Dwan Mathis. The guy is 6'4", he's 210, he's got a rifle for an arm. He's easily the fastest guy we've ever had at quarterback here. Wow. And he's got world-class speed. So how much he's going to get a chance, we'll have to see. But I'm high on Mathis. I'm high on him as a kid too. And I think he made a really big improvement from start to last part I saw him. And he's got the situation with his head. The injury has now been cleared. So that takes care of offense. Is that right? Is anybody else there? Any other position that I might have left out there, Dayne?
You got offensive line, tight end, running back, receiver, and quarterback, unless you know of another. That's an offense to me.
Okay. Now we got defense, and a guy that just makes my catfish water is Trayvon Walker, and his skill level is something that you don't see on many campuses around the country. A guy that has really prospered from learning more technique, just a balls out every play type player, and very competitive in all the drills, and just has so much ability. It's just it's been channeled into good technique now. So I think he's going to really prosper this year. And outside linebacker Nolan Smith has just continued. I talked about Anderson being a guy you need to watch for, but I think Nolan Smith is just so coachable, wants it so badly, and has such elite skills that he's made really good use of the tutelage under Dan Lanning and Kirby Smart. I mean, he's a guy that you want to take. If you got the ingredients for a good peach cobbler and you take really good peaches and you get good sugar in that and put it all together and make it good, that's what you got. You got the ingredients with this guy to be just a stellar player. And inside linebacker, Nicolby Dean started out talent-wise really like a young colt and just completely just inundated himself with knowledge and on-the-field presence. And it just made tremendous improvement since his first day here. And I look for him to be an elite defensive player. In the secondary, there's two guys that just catch my eye that I talk about Sini all the time about how he's progressed, but I just feel like he can be a special guy back there with LeCount. And then Tyson Campbell has just got so much ball skills, so much physical talent, and was really bothered by that turf toe, but he's improved his technique so much. He can latch on to you, play press coverage. He's a good tackler. So you got those four guys on defense, five guys that I just talked about: Walker, Smith, Seen, Campbell, and Dean. I mean, those five guys have improved so much, but they're already elite. So I'm fired up about the rest of our defense too. But that's pretty much what I saw between last fall and before spring started. The rest of it, I don't know one thing about what's happened over there so far with the camp that they've had.
Anything from special teamers?
Well, I'm going to talk about later in the show. You're going to ask me about the freshmen, but Camarda is really doing a good job being an all-around kicker too, and he's going to threaten, Zirkle because he can place kick too, and he can kick off. But we got so many good special teams players just because they know it's a chance to get on the field that I don't really know of anybody that's improved enough to really talk about in this case, but mainly because I didn't think about that. So I should have, but
now, Dayne, you had the series you did with Brent Rollins where you were looking at the Pro Football Focus grades of the top returners for UGA. A lot of the guys that Coach Donnan just mentioned made that top 20 list, top 21 list of guys who, who'd been graded, and, they grade every play those guys are in on. So, but I noticed a theme, a lot of them are pretty young, a lot of young talent out there. I mean, I've also heard the buzz about Kenny McIntosh. We've known Nolan Smith is going to be big. You kind of saw glimpses of what Lewis Seen could do. Some of those guys are just, we knew that Karis Jackson had all the talent in the world, but then I think it was the Vanderbilt game where he busted up his hand. So just a lot of young names out there. These aren't a lot of guys who are, coaches have mentioned guys who it's their, fifth year senior who finally are turning it on. You gotta be kind of excited about where that is. Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I wrote down these names as Coach said them, and what really strikes me is the athleticism and versatility of these players. Because I'm the PA announcer for UGA baseball when they're playing, and Rylan Godey is on the baseball roster technically. Now, he was injured last year; he didn't play, but they had him on the roster to the point that he was at least a member of the team. And so I think, all right, there's a baseball player in Godey. You got Trayvon Walker, who dominated high school basketball. Same thing with a couple of these other guys. You've got Lewis Seen, who could probably play any position in the secondary. Tyson Campbell's a track star. I just see so much versatility and athleticism. And
don't forget Karis Jackson. The first place we saw him, I think my first interview with him was at a track meet.
Yeah,
where he was winning, like throwing shot put, with all these other giant guys. He's a wide receiver, just killing everybody. And then also, he's running, jumping, just pretty badass. I mean, please continue, but I'm just like, don't forget about my Karis was also a multi-sport athlete as well.
You can't forget Peach County ever. Yeah. They're always going to show up. But what I mean by that is if these guys, for whatever reason, aren't contributing at their position, they're going to find a way to contribute on the team.
Good point.
And I know, I'm not a football coach. You are, Coach Donnan. Those are the kind of guys that that you can put them in any position and they'll find a way to succeed and kind of contribute to what the team's mission is, whether that be special teams for some of these great players, even playing on special teams, or whether it's kick returning, or whether it's finding a different spot. I think of a guy like Solomon Kinley that in some ways Warren Erickson's trajectory right now reminds me a bit of that, even though he's not that big. But every summer it was, who's going to take Solomon Kinley's spot? And I think right now people are wondering, where's Warren Erickson going to play? I know he's a starter in the bowl game. How's he going to get his spot with all these other guys in there? Would not be surprised, based on what Coach Donnan is saying, if Warren Erickson just keeps that spot all year long.
One of the things I think we have this show and you get into philosophy and you talk about stuff. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You got that. I see that thing on Dayne. I don't know when I'm talking, but I think two things are really prevalent here in this program. And I get a chance when I used to go do TV, I would watch teams practice and I'd watch coaches do things and watch drills. And a lot of coaches are really, more into their egos getting away in their teaching situation. They do too much talking and not enough drilling out there. And so, that's one thing that I always look for. But the paramount deal here for me to amplify here to our fans is our people here at the University of Georgia. There's probably people that coach as good as we do, but nobody does any better than us as far as teaching fundamentals, technique, knowledge of system, ability to use football skills. All our drills are so well organized. There's no time lost out there. And the two things I always ask a player, number one, are you coachable? What that means is when the coach tells you to do something, you're going to do it and not question it because you feel like that he's getting you in a position to be successful. But if you have that barrier in your mind that, hey, what's this guy telling me to do this? I don't know what he's crazy. I mean, I'm not going to do this. I mean, I never did this before. And when you get that kind of perception, then you're going to lose the ability to develop. Our kids are coachable. And the second thing is, can you concentrate? And as in today's society with young people, it's hard to concentrate. And by that, you don't listen. And so you're in a position where somebody's trying to teach you something. You're not looking around at the coach. You're not listening. And the reason people forget things is they never learned it in the first place. Oh, I forgot. Hey, you didn't concentrate and you didn't listen. So a little philosophy here. We got good coaches out there that make our kids concentrate and they believe in what's going on. And that's why they're successful, because if you feel like what you're doing is right, even if it's not exactly the perfect deal, it's usually going to work out pretty good. But if you go up to the line of scrimmage saying, well, coach wanted me to step with this right foot and I really think I should step with the left, you're not going to be very successful. So I think in the grand scheme of things, when I say the most improved players, that's who I think. Now, certainly I don't want to leave anybody out. There's a lot of people I've talked about before. But the big deal for us on this show is to try to give you a little insight into what we feel like's there. But our talent right now is there to be very successful. We got some question marks because they haven't done it. But our athleticism compared to the first year that Kirby was here to right now is the difference between a lot of things that I could say that aren't good words, but there's a lot of difference in our
something at Shinola. I know what you're saying. I know where you're going.
Most of our kids could walk in any locker room in the country and be competitive for a starting position.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll go back to a diatribe. I remember Scott Lakatos, former Georgia secondary coach, just lit into a player because the guy said, yeah, I got you, coach. And he's like, you haven't done what I've asked you to for like the entire year. You know, he's like, you say that, you know, and just, so you're not listening. You nod, and then you do it your own damn way. And Coach Lakatos wasn't having it, you know. He called him out and just said, you know, and then you complain to me about starting. And then every time I look up, you're talking to somebody, you know. And so you're right. There was distraction and not belief and not being coachable. And that kid, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think he ever started. So, and again, Coach Lakatos was basically explaining, hey, this is on you. You know, I'm here to coach you. I want you to succeed. I'm not trying to be against you. The more you succeed, the more we all succeed. So I think it's a good point.
Another thing I would point out here, and then I won't talk as much, but, you know, we've had a very difficult situation without practice and everything. But I really feel like these virtual meetings in its own sense have been a really kind of a godsend, because I've been able to spend a lot more time on the mental preparation than you've ever spent in your life.
Good point. Yeah.
And so, and they're physically rested, you know, and not as pushed as they would be going into a fall camp compared to, you know, all the demands placed on spring and summer and all that. So I think the mental approach is there for us. And certainly the other teams too, but the knowledge, I always say this, the two things that you got to have is knowledge of assignment, know what you're supposed to do, and then use the proper technique. Well, now they're getting ready to go on the field and use the techniques that they've learned. They're going to need to learn to utilize what they've learned on the knowledge part. So we're ahead of the game in the knowledge, but behind the game in the technique.
That makes sense. Dayne, I'm going to have Dayne start launching the questions at us, but I do want to take a quick time out to mention our friends at Athens Ford. Now, we've talked about them for years. They've been a great sponsor of our show and great sponsor of our website. And with this whole pandemic thing put a dent in their business, but I like what they're doing. You talk about the mental aspect of it, Coach, and they're constantly thinking of what can we do to make things better for our customers. And I like that they have this. Of course, they have a great website. You go to the website, they give you $250 just for showing to their website. Put in your name and phone number, and you get $250 off any vehicle. So that's pretty fantastic. It's a handshake free zone when you go over there, and they're conducting their regular and frequent disinfecting, and they're making the showroom great. But you don't even have to go into the showroom. They have this concierge service now where if you need service on your vehicle, they'll come pick it up, do the service, return it. You want to test drive the vehicle, they'll bring it out to you. You test drive it, they'll pick it up. You don't even have to go by there. You can do the vast majority of your paperwork online, when you decide to buy a vehicle. So, you're not having to sit at a desk and do all that stuff. If they have a concierge service where you're like, there's a used vehicle I want to see, and they'll walk out there and set up a Zoom meeting with you, or YouTube meeting or whatever, and walk around and show you inside and outside, like live video of the thing, So they have so many ways to take care of you that will make the customers comfortable. Just if you need to sell your vehicle, they'll take care of it. So again, all online, as little contact or as much contact as you want, whatever you're comfortable with. And that I think is just pretty damn fantastic the way they take care of their folks out there. And I also want to give a big shout out to anybody who's trying to have lunch right now. It's about 12:30. Or say you haven't had lunch yet. Today is the last day with our friends at URPI that if you use their app and you spend $25, you get a $5 bonus. So if you want to get I think for $25, you get like 3 pizzas, feed a family, and then get a $5 coupon you can use. $5 on the app that you can use later on. So today's the last day of it. So be sure to download the URPI app, jump on that deal. They have their
it's the chicken al pastor. You got to go try it, Radi.
That chicken al pastor, fantastic sandwiches. The No-No's Italian sandwich, one of my favorites. Good salads over there, and the gelato is fantastic. So they even have brownies. So fat guy wanting the brownie. But check out our friends at. Normally I mention them later on the show, but I want to mention them now. So if you're trying to think about what you want to have for lunch, jump on that URPI deal or have it for dinner tonight. Again, it's all online. You put in every customization that you want. Again, just like the Athens Ford folks, you can do it all online. And then you just show up, they walk it out to your car as contact-free as possible, the best food you can get, the best pizza you can get. So check out our friends at Athens Ford and URPI who are just, again, concentrating and making things better for us, out here dealing with this pandemic. So shout out to them. Let's jump into some of the questions while I eat hush puppies.
Yeah, if you've got questions for Coach Donnan or Radi or myself, and you're watching on YouTube, throw it in the chat. We're going to get to some of these from the dog vent over at UGAsports.com. This is from Dog KC. He says, Coach, can the kicker kick it in the end zone for touchbacks more than 50% of the time this year? Kind of a question saying, with everything lost with Rodrigo Blankenship, kind of the unheralded part of his job, kicking the ball through the end zone, where does that lie right now for the Georgia Bulldogs?
Well, that's certainly a good question, and I don't know that I can answer it except based on potential. I feel like what I've seen on Zirkle on the tape, I watched him over here at the camp when he was here. He's got the thunder leg. He can kick it in the end zone, so can Camarda. So I think, and from my standpoint, we're going to be kicking off a lot this year. I feel like we're going to score a lot of points. So, as a coach, one of the most comforting feelings that you can have when your head hits the pillow on Friday night is that that your kicker is going to be able to kick that sucker in the end zone compared to giving some team a chance to run the ball back and making like 3 or 4 first downs with a 40-yard return. So that's something you don't want to worry about. If you got that kind of kick, I think we'll be great at kicker there.
You mentioned Zirkle. I had a question for you just on the freshmen that can make an impact immediately on this team. And I don't know if you've thought about this for certain guys because, it's a funky year. They haven't gotten to practice and maybe be in the same spot as they would be. But which true freshman do you think can make a immediate impact on this team?
Well, we certainly got a bevy of talent there, among the best recruits in the country from all over the country. And I think you got to look at impact players based on where your needs are, you know,
Right.
from the standpoint of where do we need the most help. So even though we might have a 5-star player like Ringo, who probably is going to help our secondary and help our special teams, I don't know that he's going to make the impact with those 4 corners ahead of him. And, you know, we might be able to use him somewhere else. So if I leave him out, that's not because he's not going to make an impact. But I think Broderick Jones, if he can get his ankle situation under control, and I understand that's something that really the coaches feel like that I would feel like that postponing practice has got to be a big help for him and Arian Smith and those guys that had some injuries, because they won't be behind when practice starts. You know what I mean? So I think Broderick Jones, we got to get somebody in there to tackle for depth situation. Darnell Washington at tight end.
Yeah.
Even though I think Fitzpatrick's made a lot of progress, McKitty, the transfer is going to be a good help. We talked about Godey, but I think Washington's got to help us right away. Carter at defensive line, regardless who we got in the D line, I feel like he's going to make an impact right away for sure. Zirkle as a place kicker and as a kickoff guy has got to really step it up. And, let's see, one other position here I was going to talk. Oh, at wide receiver, we got several there, you know, with Robinson and Smith and Rosemary. But I think Jermaine Burton is probably the most advanced and it might have the best chance, even though these other guys might jump out there. But those are the guys to me that could jump in there right away. And as usual, I could be wrong, but more than likely I'm right. I just had to say that once.
No,
I would say more than likely I'm probably 50%, but you know, there's a lot of good players on this freshman team. And you got a lot of redshirt freshmen that could help too. You know, McClendon, Truss, those guys, we'll have to see.
Roddy, I'd love your take on the wide receiver piece of it, because you've seen a lot of these guys either on the track or playing in person when you go back to Karis Jackson or when you're looking at a Jermaine Burton. I mean, just from what you've seen from them in high school in person, what stands out?
Well, I didn't get to see a ton of these guys because, you know, in years past, it was fantastic because you could go to like the Corky Kell game and see like 8 Georgia targets, you know. Now Georgia's recruiting coast to coast, and actually get out and see some of these guys in person. You usually have to catch them at a camp, which is, you know, usually not shorts and helmets, you know, it's not really in pads. But like, I'd never got to see Darnell Washington play. I never got to see Keely Ringo play. Didn't get to see Kendall Milton light it up, you know, so just going off their film. But from the buzz that I've been hearing, I want folks to keep an eye on Marcus Rosemary, you know, just I think you need to have a physical wide receiver. I mean, yes, Georgia has a new offensive coordinator, you know, I don't think they're going to completely change the offense, especially when you have 2 5-star running backs and James Cook and Zamir White back there. I've heard great buzz about Kenny McIntosh turning it up. Then you got Kendall Milton, and, you know, people are going to forget about Dejon Edwards, but he's going to remind you about it. You have 5 great running backs, an offensive line that's built to run the ball. I don't think that any offensive coordinator is going to come in and say, okay, well, let's go fun and gun. They're going to be built to run the ball, which means you're going to need some wide receivers who can block. And from some of the buzz I've heard is that Marcus Rosemary is not scared to do so. Jermaine Burton's got the body to do it. But to me, I still think if you want to be a freshman wide receiver to hit the field, you either need to be an absolute freak like George Pickens, you need to be technically as sound as Dominic Blaylock, or you need to be willing to get out there and bust heads like Karis Jackson did, you know. And if it's Burton, if it's Justin Robinson, because, you know, we've seen that he's willing to lay somebody out too. Whichever of those wide receivers is willing to put his body on the line and take out a corner, take out a safety, crack down on a outside linebacker or something like that. That's the guy that Todd Monk is going to be like, yeah, I need him in the game. And as coaches mentioned, you know, there are a lot of times when they call those plays and they call those formations, there is a specific add-on to the play call to be sure that you have the right wide receiver in there. So if any of those freshman wide receivers want to come in and say, hey, look, you know, I'm ready to, you know, I can break off and run a great route, you know, I can take off on a 9, you know, but I'm willing to come in and lay the lumber. That's the freshman I think is going to make an impact, and that's what's going to be needed because there are a lot of wide receivers ahead of him. Just my take.
Roddy, what did Coach say a second ago? He said he's right most of the time.
He's right all the time, but
Okay.
he's going to be all modest about it. And now when we start our watch along shows, and we're still looking for a couple sponsors for this, we just picked up a new one. We'll mention him later on. But when you get a chance to check out the watch along show, where we're actually, the three of us are sitting in Coach Donnan's theater, and the game is on, and he's calling these plays before they happen. You get an idea how much when he says, "Oh, I'm right 50% of the time," that is BS. He's right all the time. So,
Yeah.
Well, what did Coach say last week, though? He said, I expect a lot of flips in recruiting in the coming months. And then what happened yesterday?
yesterday, Georgia gets back Jared Wilson, an offensive line recruit who is already committed to Georgia once. And Jake Roos isn't here today. He's
in the bushes somewhere.
Yeah, he's in the bushes. He's come up with his recruiting scoop. So Saturday morning, he goes on the vault at UGAsports.com and says, "Hey, I'd keep an eye on Jared Wilson." And I'm like, "What? The kid that's committed to North Carolina, the kid that decommitted from Georgia and flipped over there, who's I've heard no rumors that he's discontent or unhappy or anything like that." And Jake puts it out there, and years later, I still have this knee-jerk reaction where I'm like, that's just coming so completely out of the blue, you know. Well, he did the same thing with JT Daniels. Like, yeah, JT Daniels is going to flip or is going to, transfer to Georgia. I'm like, there's garbage. How do you come up with this crazy stuff? And, I'm looking around to see if he's drunk my beer or something. But sure enough, he tells us Saturday morning to keep an eye on Jared Wilson. And then, a couple days later, Jared Wilson has decommits from North Carolina, flips back to Georgia. And the vitriol, the questioning of the coaches, I just don't understand. The Georgia coaches won back-to-back number one class recruiting titles, and they were in on Jared Wilson early. It wasn't a plan B, plan C, plan D guy. This is one of the first commits they took, and they had a chance to get him back, and they got him. So, Coach, or is it Rivals that's off with a 3-star rating, or is it just people are so used to getting 4 and 5 stars that anybody that has a 3-star, they're just going to lose their mind over? Give us your thoughts on Jared Wilson, Coach.
Well, when we first went after him, since he's from North Carolina, I think Clemens, North Carolina, which is over there near Winston-Salem, people near Wake Forest University. I asked Sam about him because at that time, Pittman was still the coach. And I got a lot of people in North Carolina I still talk to that are friends of mine, some coaches and all. And he was saying, look, this kid can be just like Hill. He's got that kind of ability. He's really strong, big legs. And he's more, even though he's playing tackle now, he'll be a guard. Maybe could even play center for us. But for us to go after a guy in North Carolina that early like we did, it's pretty obvious that we felt like he had a lot of upside. And that's the way we look at everybody. These coaches don't really get too involved with the stars. I don't know I was ever able to get anybody at North Carolina when I was recruiting in North Carolina State without that star system. I mean, Lawrence Taylor, I don't know what he was not even he didn't even have anything on his – he wouldn't have been rated at all because he was just a skinny kid. But my point to you is particularly, some people have said things, let's don't get all up in the air. We just flipped a 3-star. And let me tell you something. Anytime Georgia takes a player, he's a player because you haven't seen many guys since Kirby's been here. They can't play. Some of them have left because they couldn't get on the field here, but they're playing other places. But I like this guy's bulk. I like his ability to come off the ball. He can get good leverage. And, we needed somebody. We lost Ferguson, and we needed to replace him. We need one more lineman. And somebody said there's a good one down there in South Georgia that we've talked about forever on this show named Mims, and we need to get him. But so that's my analysis of I know that North Carolina's mad about losing him because they're having a tremendous year. North Carolina's having the best recruiting year they've had since they've had rankings. Mac Brown's doing a great job. And for him to recruit a guy. They've turned down some good players in North Carolina that have gone to other places, but I know it hurts them to lose that guy.
That's a point about Matt Luke too, though. North Carolina, this is not the Tar Heels that were recruiting 5 years ago. This program is recruiting among the nation's best right now. And for Matt Luke to flip a guy in North Carolina from North Carolina, that's a big time play.
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of leverage there back and forth too. The competitiveness, the fact that Longo guy who was his offensive coordinator, that he let go. Or, I don't know that he let him go or what, but the guy left and went to North Carolina, and they ended up hiring Rodriguez. So he was the lead recruiter on this kid from North Carolina, Jared Wilson. So Luke took a lot of pride in whipping his butt, taking him away from him, I'm sure. So you didn't know that, did you, Roddy?
I did not. Well, that's why I listen to the show. That's why I'm here. And a big shout out to our friend Nate Long, who actually made it up. He's actually here having a little meal.
Is Nate back? Where is he? How's he feeling?
He says he's doing good. He's rehabbing well, fighting. And
tell him hello.
Coach Donnan says hello. So Nate's over there having a good meal. I'm having a good meal. You also want a great meal, swing by our friends out at Academia Brewing Company. We've been out there last few weeks, and I can't tell you the beer selection they've had going on out there has been off the charts. They keep doing each weekend they have some new special beer on tap. If you get a chance, swing by our friends at Academia Brewing Company. Of course, a couple shows we did were in that big meeting room they have. So if you're having a wedding party, the dinner beforehand, the rehearsal dinner, and the rehearsal dinner out there. If you're having a Greek event, you're having a business event, they have an entire room on the side of the building that you can rent out. If you want to have a band in there, you can do that as well. So great corporate space, great event to have stuff. But if you just want to, we had some friends come up from out of town. They stopped by. Of course, they left with a case of beer, some of the Bring Your Ninja beer. But they have all these fantastic beers out there. And then you actually have some of the best food in Athens out there. And I'm not trying to make fun of some of the great Athens landmarks that are wonderful restaurants. But if you're a beer person, you want to go out there. If you're a foodie, you want to go out there. So big shout out to our friends at Academia Brewing Company for hosting us the past few weeks and letting us come out there and drink all their beer and eat all their good food. And
that's the last place that we had a team meeting together as well. So our entire team is all about it.
If it's good enough for all the guys at UGAsports.com, trust me, it's good enough for you to take your friends and family out there.
And Roddy paid.
Yeah. Well, the company paid. I ain't paying it. These slugs. Before we get to some of your other questions, Dayne, we had one come in via Twitter from UGA Alum 95. Says, would UGA be better off just dropping Georgia Tech game at a point in the future schedule? It offers no real benefit to UGA playing them anymore. Coach, since the last time we had the show, the ACC came out with their schedule saying they were going to do a 10+1. Then the SEC came out with the 10 conference game schedule, no out of conference games. So for the first time since 1924, Georgia and Georgia Tech are not going to play. If you get a chance, folks, go by UGAsports.com. Read the free story Patrick Garvin did about why they didn't play in 1924, why they didn't play in 1923, 1922, 1920. 1920, 5 years where they didn't play because Georgia insulted Georgia Tech so badly at a baseball game that it pissed them off for 5 years. So get a chance to read that story. But so for the first time in basically 96 years, Georgia and Georgia Tech are not going to play. But UGA Alum 95 coaches, why should they put them back on the schedule? What's the point of playing Georgia Tech? Is it worth it? Wouldn't it be better to basically leave them off the schedule? You played Georgia Tech. You know that game, that whole rivalry inside. Now, give us your take.
I guarantee Coach McGill would turn over in his grave if somebody said that you can't play Georgia Tech. I mean, come on. I don't have near the history of Georgia as some of the alums and some of the players and all, but you got to play that game. I mean, it's written in stone that you got to have that game. Forget about some other games. But I do feel like one thing that's really relevant right now is the fact that all these games schedule way out in advance, but just what's happened here recently can show you we probably don't need to schedule that far in advance. This play a few more conference games and a lot less non-conference, and everything will be cool. But you got to play Tech. I mean, come on. And he certainly raises.
But what does Georgia get out of it, though?
What do you get out of it? First of all, anytime you go into high school and you're recruiting against Tech, you talk about that. You know, hey, we get to play them every year, and it's nothing like, you know, that locker room when you beat Tech. I know we lost a couple when I was here, and it still chaps me about it. But let me just tell you something: you get a lot out of one of the things with your neighbors. You know, one guy went to Tech, one went to Georgia. I mean, it's just good. Some of it's not real good banner back and forth, but it's you know, you like to go against your rival people, and I just think that would be, maybe we got to do it this one year. We can't play them, but
yeah,
we got to keep that game. I mean, don't you think we got to keep it?
Oh, I do. I was just playing devil's advocate on the behalf of UGA Alum 95, because I get a lot of people like, well, what's the point of it? Wouldn't it be better to replace that game with somebody else, you know? And to me, I always say it this way, because we always have the question, and Dayne has seen this 100 times at UGAsports.com. There's the faction in South Georgia that believes Florida is our number one rival. There's a faction in Columbus, LaGrange, that believes Auburn is the number one Georgia rivalry, especially because it's the oldest, you know. A lot of people inside the perimeter believe it's Georgia Tech. People in Ringgold and North Georgia believes it's Tennessee, you know. Folks in Augusta believes it's South Carolina. Everyone's got their number one rival. And I always say it like this: lose to Tech, and there's no question as to who Georgia's biggest rival is. Just lose to Tech. Coach Donnan can tell you firsthand, you know. If you're in the alumni groups, it is a absolute hell year if you have to listen to your Tech buddies, you know, your Tech girlfriend, your Tech family members, or just sidewalk fans, whoever they are, lord over you that Tech won a game. So I guarantee, hey, you saw Kirby loses his first year. I doubt he ever loses to him again. He will not have that. So
I've got friends who are Georgia fans that say that if Georgia loses to Tech, then Christmas is canceled that year. It's that serious.
Yeah, and people say that in like hyperbole. It's not all hyperbole. It's not all exaggeration. It is. So I get why you're like, hey, well, maybe, you know, you change that game out with Clemson. You know, you change it out with get an additional home game then, you know, and hopefully Georgia does something next year to get some more home games for the folks in town that are going to suffer this year with you know, lack of tailgating, a lack of people in the stands, you know. So if they can work some sort of magic where you get more home games next year, great. But I'm with you, Coach. To me, you have to play that game. And here's the thing: as much as people are okay with maybe skipping it this year, you miss it for a year or two, people will be clamoring to have that game back. I remember when people didn't want to play Clemson anymore. Now they want to play them all the time. So it's just that's how it goes. Dayne,
got another question in the chat. It's a schedule.
I want to mention our friends at Aaron Overhead Doors. I've mentioned that they have the residential side that they're doing now. I want folks to also realize they also have residential and financing available. So if during this pandemic you have a situation where, let's say, money's a little tight, you know, you get limited hours, or you've been cut back, but you need work done on your garage door, or I know there are some people who are expanding. There's some people who are taking this opportunity. There's new buildings coming up, and if you need a bay on your back door for taking in deliveries and stuff like that, call our friends at Aaron Overhead Doors. They'll be willing to do all the residential work, of course, you know. And I've seen they recently went up took care of somebody in North Carolina, 2.5 hours away. You know, they went up there, they're going to take care of the people in North Carolina. That's how much.
Jared Wilson's house.
Exactly. So they're taking care of the folks in North Carolina just because the words got out of what good service they offer. So big shout out to our friends at Aaron Overhead Doors. But again, if you're in a situation where you're like, money's a little tight, but I want this done, I need this fixed, they have financing now. So just go to AaronOverheadDoors.com. You can click on the residential side of it. Again, this is new on their website. You can check out all the residential stuff. Plus, you can also check on their financing deals. So we want to give a big shout out to them. Again, just like our friends at Athens Ford, our friends at Europi, friends at Academic Brewing Company, friends here in Classic City Eats. They are working with, they're figuring out what people need and working to take care of them. So big shout out to our friends at Aaron Overhead Doors for being proactive and being smart about what people need in this trying time. So go ahead and jump into your question there, Dane.
Yeah, this is a question from Alex Conway in the YouTube chat, and he gets more on the scheduling information that came out last week. He says, who is Georgia going to play now that Georgia Tech is not on the schedule? Well, Alex, we don't know for sure, but the answer that we have is that Georgia will add 2 conference games. Most people think that that's going to be the next 2 rotating cross-divisional opponents, which in Georgia's case would be Arkansas and Mississippi State, but that is not set in stone, and we do not know that for sure. So that's not 100%. What I do want to ask you, Coach, is when the SEC made its announcement that it would be a 10-game conference schedule, the day after the ACC said that they would have the 10+1, what was your gut reaction to the SEC's decision?
Yeah, I felt like it was the right thing to do just from a standpoint of postponing everything and then, looking at the safety factor of trying to realize what's going to happen when the regular students get here. The rest of the students beside the athletes. So, I thought you could talk about the +1 and all that, but you got a built-in situation where you got an open date during the season. There's 3 weeks where they got them mixed around, and then you got an open date before the championship game. Who knows if we're going to get to play any games, but I think we're just buying time here. I think that's what you're going to do when you hear an announcement about practice starting, waiting for Radi to tell us because nobody else will know but him. But we got to take advantage of the 10 games, and hopefully we can, get in the playoffs. If he can certainly do well on your division and win the championship going through a 10-game SEC conference schedule, you're going to be one of the 4 playoff teams. That's for sure.
And Roddy, in terms of buying time, to me, I thought even as much as waiting for students to get on campus and seeing how that's going to affect everything, I thought it was really smart to be able to push your start date, that first game, behind the NFL starting, behind some other conferences, so the SEC can be a bit more reactionary based on other people's mistakes, so to speak. I mean, we're seeing that with baseball is struggling in some ways. We're seeing that the NBA is working out in some ways, but how can you do a happy medium of avoiding some mistakes and learning from others? I don't know if you thought the same thing, but it seemed like the pushback start date was really smart in that sense to me.
I agree, because we see when some baseball guys don't take it seriously and they go out to a casino, or somebody goes, somebody in basketball goes get some wings or something like that. They set up rules, and then everyone feels like, okay, well, those are the good rules for everybody else. I'm going to do what, but I'll be fine, because everyone thinks it can't happen to me. So we've seen that there are some players. We saw this happen in the Pac-12. They're saying, look, we need more, I don't say guarantees, but we need more say in how this is going to go down. They are more worried about if the students aren't allowed to go back to 3 or 4 of the schools that have football teams in the Pac-12. They're like, look, if you're not sending the students back, why are you sending the football players back? We're not going to play if the students aren't back in town. If it's not safe enough for them, then why is it safe for us? Where the SEC, when the league transcript that came out, the call that they had with some of the SEC players had with some of the SEC officials, they're like, look, what about when the players come back? I mean, the students come back and they bring back the infection with them, and they're not doing what they're supposed to do. So you can see it's almost the student athletes have 2 different philosophies. One is, well, if the students come back, they're not going to socially distance. They're not going to take care of themselves, and we're going to get it, And on the other side, they're like, if they can come back, then why? If they can't come back, then why should we come back? So I think, to your point, the more information you have, and the more it can show that, hey, this didn't work in baseball, so you guys have to take care of yourselves. It's on you. And it's serious. If a team has to be tossed out, or we have to cancel because these guys didn't pay attention to the rules we set in place. In other words, you could have that warning, that sad example of who screwed it up or how it screwed up. And then you see what's happening with basketball and golf. It's like, oh, this seems to be working. So I think it was a smart move on their part. I like one of the questions we got from San Diego Dog. He said, what are the chances we play 3 games before the season gets shut down? He said, or what are the chances we play 3 games before a game has to be rescheduled due to coronavirus cases on our team or the opponent? I mean, we saw that happen in baseball. I don't know what the chances are. I wish I could answer that, but I do think you're going to have to see a change in the mindset. A lot of people were banging on the SEC for telling some of the players, hey, sit in the back of the room, avoid downtown, avoid your classmates who may not be taking this as seriously as you are. And a lot of people thought that was a horrible answer. I thought it was a damn good answer because, yes, if you want this to work, it is on you. We have to take personal responsibility. We can't guarantee this from other people doing their jobs. You have to take care of yourself. So we are going to see cases. Georgia's had its cases. Clemson's had its. I think everybody's going to have some cases, but you're just going to have to do everything to mitigate it. And hopefully when you see the headlines pop up that this baseball team has these guys are out, these guys are out in the NFL, these guys are out in the NBA, that the college players will be like, wow, I got to take this seriously. I got to do everything I can to mitigate my chances of getting it.
Even beyond the COVID, though, Coach made a really good point earlier about injuries and how players could be prepared based on practice. Look at baseball pitchers right now and how many are having arm trouble because of the different preparation leading to their season. So you got to be careful with the players' health beyond COVID because they're playing a violent sport.
Yeah, I think another thing about the conference only, and, people have talked about, all these conferences are doing things on their own. But if you look at all the Power Fives conferences, they're all going to a conference only schedule. So that's pretty much the same for each one. The Big 12 does have a situation where they get to play one other game. So I don't know when they'll play that. But the point is, if you're playing a non-Power 5 team, how are these kids being tested? What's the protocol for them compared to your players?
Yeah.
And they can expose your players just as easily as their own players can. So I think the safety value is very prevalent there for SEC because they're going to come out. They got all these experts, among which Ron Corson is one, our own trainer, and they're going to set up a systematic type deal where this is going to be the protocol every week before you can play in a game. And this is what's going to happen if you are tested positive. And this is going to be what's happened if you're around somebody that's tested positive. So everybody in the league's doing the same thing. Now, if you're playing a non-conference team from a Power 5 school, they might be a little bit different than yours. So there's a good reason not to play anybody that's outside your realm there. That's what worries me a little bit about the Sun Belt. They came out yesterday saying that they're going to play 12 games, 8 conference, 4 non-conference, but there's no way they got the testing.
Dan, I think we lost Coach.
Yeah, we lost your mic for a second there, Coach.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, gotcha.
Good.
But I don't think they have enough money to test them like they need to in these non-power conferences. So you're going to see a lot of outbreaks along there.
Very true.
My joke was to do a bubble at Legion Field. I don't know, that would never work, but that was my joke. Let's throw them in Birmingham, bubble it up.
Well, you could have 4 different sites. You could have one in Atlanta, one in Birmingham, one that you could do all that stuff. But in the grand scheme of things, these kids are students too. So, we'll have to see. But as far as the Pac-12 and some of those demands, I think one good demand to me that should be looked at is the fact that they be provided group insurance for 6 years after they play. And certainly
I agree 100%.
With the money involved in it and all the things that you could certainly get a group policy where a guy could have that ability. And then when he gets a job, if he wants to get on his own work with somebody else, he's working with a big company, he can switch over. But they're going to need some kind of protection because, I watch on TV and they're talking about all these doctors. They don't know the long range implications of what's going to happen to your heart and your organs and all that. Nobody knows that. I mean, nobody can project that yet. You don't have enough data, but it's just an unbelievable experience right now to be involved in that with anybody that you know or a family member. I've talked to people that had hardly any symptoms, and I've talked to people that felt like they're getting ready to have their last breath. So, it's just. But I do feel like that our protocol is going to be such that safety's first, and even though you're going to lose some players because of it, I like the testing that we're going to have.
Yeah, and I do want to bring back one point that I think
lose them for a game. I don't mean lose.
No, I mean I know exactly what you mean, because you have some guys that have to sit out, and you may have some guys that opt out. And I do think the best thing the SEC and a lot of the other conferences did was to say, look, if you're not comfortable playing, you don't have to. We're still going to honor your scholarship. And I think that if these folks want to say, well, it's all about money, and you're forcing these kids, or they're indentured servants, and it's not voluntary. Again, that's some bullshit, and I'm sick of hearing these pundits who don't follow sports, who just follow politics, and they try to politicize this into us versus them, holier than thou attitude, and it drives me crazy because that's not how it is. These players do not have to play. No one's getting ribbed. No one's being forced to go out there. They will still get their education because they are student athletes first, and anybody who says otherwise is they have an agenda. So don't pay attention to them.
And not to sound like a shill for the SEC, but I've been really impressed with Greg Sankey and the SEC administrators for, I guess, the calmness that they've had, at least publicly, in how they're handling this. And I thought their messaging was really on point. I think they're doing the best they can in a tough situation.
And I want to go to your point. Like, a lot of people were the story that went on the Washington Post that had the SEC call that was leaked, and the way they couched it, I thought was pretty poorly done, because I thought that was a very good, honest conversation that they had, and what they had with the student athletes saying, look, here's what we know, here's what we don't. And it sounded to me like if I was a student athlete, that's the conversation I would have wanted to have. Be honest with me. Don't give me a PR buzz. Don't give me something that's wonderfully written to be disseminated on Twitter and, official response. Talk to me like another human being, because, I am. So I thought where it stands now, I thought that the SEC was trying to be honest with them, and hopefully we'll have more answers going forward.
The other misnomer with that, and this I'll be done after this because I keep interjecting. People keep saying that it's administrators or coaches that just want the kids to play. Hell no, the kids want to play. These players want to go play football. Yeah, they want to do it safely, and they want to be sure there's not going to be long-term ramifications. But they're athletes, and they've worked hard, and they want to show what they've worked hard for. So to think that these players are being dragged to the field, no, it's not that at all. They want to get out there and play football. That's what they do.
Very true. Do we have any other questions we need to jump on there, Dayne?
I think we're done with questions. It's probably parting words time.
Wait, there was one. No, the coach. There was one from Lump Dog. I don't think he wants to answer this one though. But I'll ask it just in the case. Coach, was there ever an opposing coach that you enjoyed beating the most?
You could open up a can of worms there, but there's several of them I didn't beat enough, that's for sure.
And
see, I thought he was going to go with an answer there that was like a coach that he was a coach with, and then they parted ways to go to different schools, and it was him going against his buddy, like two old brothers or something. I thought that was the answer that was going to come up.
No, you don't want to put anybody on blast. Coach is too savvy for that. I will ask you this one too, the same question, Coach, because we have a lot of threads on the board about bourbon. And he asked which bourbon does or did the coach like. And do you even like bourbon?
I'm as much as I hear you guys talk about beer and alcohol and all, I mean, I got a lot of problems, but I've just never been much of a consumer of alcoholic beverages, but that doesn't mean that, I just never have gotten into it much, but I guess I don't know which one it would be, but
as evidenced by the Natty Light Seltzer sitting on his table back there, waiting for you to come drink it at a watch party, Roddy.
We got that ready, and I think Dayne came up with a good idea that we check the fans out. But we got all this downtime. We might go back to some of the old games that we played here, some thrilling games, and do a watch along there and see what I can remember about it. And maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe
Dave
get
McMahon mentioned that, and I thought I'd love to go back and do a watch along with you facing down Purdue, facing down Auburn, and get the play-by-play of what was going on through your mind and what some of the backstories that were going on during those games. I'd love to do that.
Maybe get a couple of ex-players to zoom in on it too.
Oh, absolutely, that would be fun.
One of them's a head coach over here in Georgia too, isn't he?
I think so. Yeah, I think one of your former players is a head coach at Georgia. Now that you mention that,
maybe we get him to zoom in. Anyway, Dayne, you have your homework cut out, figuring out how we're going to get this done, and Coach Donnan, you got to bring back some of your former players, and we'll get them on the show. Hopefully, next week we will know when the first day of practice is, and ideally, we might know that by the end of the day. But I'd also like to know what Georgia's schedule is going to be like. What will the SEC schedule? And hopefully next week, this time, we'll be talking about the pros and cons of the hopefully newly released SEC schedule. So we'll look forward to talking about that. Jake Roos will be back next week. We'll have a lot more recruiting talk then. Hopefully Georgia stays hot on the recruiting trail. Be sure to swing by UGASports.com. Check out the daily recap. We have a new sponsor over there. It's called JFQ Lending. They are doing a feature every day with Jason Butt, Jason Butt of The Athletic, who is now a contributor at UGA Sports. And each day he does a thing called the Daily Recap. And it's all the stories, all the tweets, all the best threads on the board, stories, news events that you need to know about, stuff on the Braves and the Hawks and Falcons and stuff like that. So it's just a great rundown. If you're in a hurry, you're trying to get to work, or you just got back from work and you haven't had a chance to read the board all day and you want to know what the hell's going on, check out the Daily Recap that Jason Butt is doing. It's a fantastic piece. It is the first thing I read every day, and check it out. And check out our friends at JFQ Lending. They're doing ridiculous rates for refinances and home purchases. The rates right now are fantastic. So shout out to them for being new sponsors and sponsoring the Daily Recap at UGAsports.com. Check it out, and we will talk to all of you next Tuesday. We look forward to it.